Hi, folks. Welcome to our unclear on the concept moment for this episode.
What, no gift for me? Give me that back!
Well, there you go. What do you think, Rico?
Well, it's kind of like when the Grinch stole Christmas. It really didn't make him happy in the end.
Exactly. You know, it's funny how we say we believe in generosity. I mean, I tell people I believe in it, right? And I think a lot of us do this. But when it comes to actually giving, our brains go into financial defense mode. Today's show is about why giving isn't good for others, why it isn't just good for others. It's also good for us.
So this is one of these rare episodes where being selfish and feeling better about yourself, it actually works out.
Exactly, right? And that's a good way to put it. And so for you folks out there, if you're listening to this as a podcast, you can see this unclear on the concept clip at theprofessorislive.com or on our YouTube channel.
All right, let's give them the good stuff.
Here we go.
Welcome to The Professor is Live with Mark Salisbury, Professor of Computer Science at the University of St. Thomas. In each lively 25-minute episode, Mark and producer Rico Smart dive into topics shaping our world, featuring expert interviews and engaging live audience participation. Discover groundbreaking ideas for the future and timeless wisdom you can't afford to forget, all infused with humor and charm. Leave every episode feeling inspired, informed, and optimistic about what lies ahead. For more bragging about this show, go to theprofessorislive.com.
You know, every time I hear that intro, I always think we need to try harder. All right. I'm Mark Salisbury. Welcome to The Professor is Live. I'm here with my producer, Rico. That's him right down in the corner. And today we're exploring what science tells us about generosity. Why does giving, our time, our money, our attention, make us happier, healthier, and more connected?
It's one of these rare occasions where being selfish and giving actually works out.
Yes, it is. Exactly, right? I was waiting for that wisdom, Rico, because you always have something to say about this that kind of puts some clarity on the subject. But joining us today is Hilary Davidson Green, and she's one of the co-authors of The Paradox of Generosity. It's published by Oxford University Press, and she's a sociologist whose research at the University of Notre Dame uncovered how generosity affects our well-being and what keeps us from really practicing it.
So she's basically measuring the science behind it's better to give than receive.
Exactly, right? So let's see what she says, and let's just see how she says it. It's fascinating. Welcome, Hilary, to The Professor is Live.
Thank you, Mark. I'm very glad to be here. I love talking about this research and topic, and so excited to have this discussion with you.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're here too, because I actually bought your book several years ago. Let's get over here so we can see it. And we bought it for our church. So we were trying to build some science behind generosity we're asking people to do. And so it was actually published by Oxford University Press in 2014, and you were one of the co-authors. And it was based on some actual study that you did. And so can you tell us a little bit about that study?
Sure. Well, so this book comes from the Science of Generosity Initiative based out of the University of Notre Dame. It was a 5-year project led by Christian Smith, who is just a prolific sociologist of religion and culture. I was deeply involved in this project, and there are many facets to it. And part of the study involved a survey of over 2,000 people, 2,000 Americans, nationally representative. We asked them everything, all of the taboo topics about money, all of the topics about volunteering, giving, what life was like for them. And then from there, we sampled 40 families spread out all throughout the US, and we did in-depth interviews with all adults in those households. So about 62 in-depth interviews. The total interview time was about 4 hours, spread out over 2 days. And we also joined these families for a participant observation to kind of get a feel for how people lived, how they interacted with neighbors, what they did for fun. So some of these participant observation opportunities included a shopping trip to Hermes with somebody's personal shopper. I got one where it's summertime, there's no air conditioning, and it's just time to watch TV, and that's what we did. Or going to a baseball game, really anything and everything, going to church. So what we did is we really wanted to understand how people lived, what generosity meant to them in their everyday lives. And so this book in particular, though, takes the question of, okay, so pretty much every major world religion, right, has a teaching about the goodness of generosity, that it's good to be a giver, right? Jesus of Nazareth talks about it's better for the person to give his own life than to get something in return. This is in Buddhism, Islam, Confucianism. These all have these teachings. And so our question was, okay, that's great. These are very, very old teachings. Not many of us seem particularly interested in generosity. So does it still matter? Are these teachings still relevant to our daily lives? Is there any wisdom there? So what we sought to do is to take from those surveys and from those interviews actual empirical data. And what we found is, yes, it is not only a philosophical teaching, it is a sociological fact that it is better to give than receive. And the flip side of that is that by holding on to what we have, when we could use it to benefit other people, by clinging on to what we have, that is actually quite bad for us. And we measured this in all sorts of ways with happiness, health, sense of purpose, sense of growth. We measured generosity broadly as well. And so the good news is that generosity can be a very powerful tool to increasing our overall sense of well-being. The not so good news is that most of us are actually not quite that generous.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise. But I like to think of that as an opportunity, that we all have an opportunity to grow and live fuller lives, richer lives, more connected lives.
And there also is some kind of prescriptive advice in this, right? So little things we can do. And I think one of the lines I read is, you can't just do it every once in a while. You kind of have to work on it. It has to be kind of purposeful. Is that kind of what we're talking about?
Mark, that's absolutely right. So when we went through different types of generosity, what we found is that practice matters so much. If you are, say, giving blood just occasionally, or checking the box on your driver's license to be an organ donor, or even, unfortunately, just making the one-time choice to do estate planning, that doesn't move the needle on anyone's happiness. So it has to be a practice. So generosity is really, it's a virtue, it's a habit, it is a way of being oriented toward the world.
Yeah. Well, one of the things whenever we kind of bring together an experiment and we walk into it, we always have expectations ahead of time, because otherwise we wouldn't have picked that study, right? I mean, that's one of the things, and I've had my own graduate students, and, that you do have expectations when you're going in, and it usually has to be, and this is the part we talk about up front, is more than a hunch, right? And so you went into this with your eyes open, expecting to see some of the things you described. But what was the most surprising thing to you that you learned?
That is a great question. I think the surprising thing for me really was the fact that generosity has to be a practice. So sometimes in academia, when we think about generosity, sometimes the conversation gets stuck in a place of, are humans naturally altruistic or are we naturally selfish? Which way are we going? Far more interesting to me, and I think to most people maybe outside of academia, is, well, what can we do? What are the sorts of actions we can take to grow and to become something different, whether we are naturally selfish or altruistic? I can't say for sure, but I can say that these practices empirically truly matter.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I thought was really interesting towards the end is kind of like a debrief. You have a conclusion section. And one of the ways you described is one of your participants in your study, and I think his name was Truman Wright, which is a great name, by the way. But anyway, he was very reflective on this whole experience. And so can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, and all of these years later, Truman's words, they stick with me, because I think what we found, because many of us are like ungenerous, right? We found that people just weren't necessarily aware that generosity was something that they could do. They thought it was something nice to do. Lots of people told us that it's just boring. In fact, we had one couple, after we wrapped up their 4 hours each of interviews, so a total of 8 hours.
Ooh.
And they each sat down with us and told us, you really need to rethink your questions here. You asked so many questions about giving money and volunteering and relational generosity. And I've got to tell you, and they were truly trying to be helpful, this is just not that interesting of a topic. So I thought that's kind of funny that like it's generosity is seen. It's not sexy. It's not fun. We don't really think of it as something that it's nice to do, but it's not necessary to do. And what we're finding is actually it can be life-changing. And in Truman's case, like, he just hadn't had the opportunity to really think about it. I think he talked about his life in terms of like, well, I've never had financial trouble. I've never been to jail. I've never really been in trouble, right? I've lived a good life, but he hadn't really considered what it might be like to take that next step beyond just, keeping his own like life and self afloat. And what would it be like for him to give back to his community, to get involved, and how would that feel? I found that ending of his interview just so powerful, and it truly sticks with me.
Well, one of the things is when we do studies is we're supposed to be kind of unbiased and objective, and we have a certain amount of space, even if we're doing interviews for people, a certain amount of space between us, the person, the thing that we're studying. Has this impacted you in any way?
Yes. I think for me personally, and this is, I think, probably one of the most, especially as I get older, as I talk with people, as I get more feedback on this book as time goes on, what I have learned and what I try to live by is that making that shift from a scarcity mindset to one of abundance is absolutely key. It's critical. It is liberating, and yet it is so challenging to do, especially when we have so many messages in our culture writ large about consumerism and how it's good to achieve and to have nice things and to have a certain status. It is really hard to say, is that truly necessary? But to step into a place of, I can give back, to rethink things. Gosh, trying to think more. Oh, the other thing. I hope you edit this part. I knew I had something to say.
I like the way you paused this, so our viewers will know we did this live with no rehearsal.
Perfect. Yes. The other thing I will say is that we established a family motto. So I mentioned that I have 3 young children. They're still quite young. Our family motto, we borrowed it from the Jesuits, is that we are people for others. So what that means is that we try to live our lives in a way where we are always mindful of not only how we can best serve our communities, how we can use whatever we have and be good stewards of what we have, but also that we are not fully human. We are not fully people unless we are connected with others. So I know that sounds very abstract, but for my family, that has been an absolute anchor point. And for myself, I find myself constantly making sure that I am shifting away from that scarcity mindset and towards one of abundance.
Wow, I sense that's our takeaway. So thank you very much, Hilary, for being with us today.
Of course.
Well, and there you have it, Rico. So,
Oh, nice.
Yeah, she's a very, very nice person. And that was very pleasant. And she's just as pleasant off camera as she is in the interview. So, but here's what I take away from her book and her study. And that is that generosity isn't just good manners, it's good science. And giving consistently improves happiness, health, and meaning in life. And stinginess does just the opposite. Holding on tight isolates us and erodes our well-being. Generosity must be practiced. It's not a single act, but a lifestyle. And shifting from scarcity to abundance is a mindset change that can transform how we live and how we lead.
So basically, if you want to feel better about yourself, give a little bit away.
Yes, that's exactly. And I just want to put my chip in right now that if you ever decide to give that Camaro away that you have, Rico has a beautiful Camaro, and I'm available, just to let you know. I'll keep you in mind. See, we never talked about this before the show, folks, so we can be spontaneous just like that. All right.
Do you have a quote for us today, sir?
I do, exactly, right? And my quote is, pausing for a second, just for effect here. We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. And that was attributed to Winston Churchill.
Well, it didn't sound like Sesame Street.
It doesn't. Although they have a lot of generosity things going on. I mean, that Big Bird comes off as a pretty generous fellow, doesn't he? So.
Him and his imaginary friend Snuffleupagus.
All right. I sense the end of this episode, Rico. So that's it for today's episode. And you can watch past shows at theprofessorislive.com, our YouTube channel, or our Spotify page. Subscribe, share, and join the conversation.
But first, go out and do something generous.
Exactly. See you next time on The Professor is Live.
The Professor is Live is hosted by Mark Salisbury, produced by Rico Smart. We go live on LinkedIn, then bring it straight to you as a podcast. Want the inside scoop on new episodes and the chance to bring The Professor is Live to your own event? Don't wait. Join The Professor is Live with Mark Salisbury Group on LinkedIn, or head to theprofessorislive.com today. While you're there, check out our Executive Coaching for the Era of AI program. It's based on Mark's book, Leadership in the Era of AI. It will empower you to lead with more brains, more courage, and more heart, so you can cut through complexity, embrace change with confidence, and inspire the people around you. This isn't just about leadership at work. It's about transforming your life in the era of AI. Until next time, stay curious, stay optimistic, and keep leading with purpose. The Professor is Live. With Mark Salisbury, copyright 2025.